Hello, and welcome back to the Lakers Exceptionalism Podcast. My name is Tom Z, joined as always by Tim, aka Cranjis McBasketball. Tim, we are recording this on Tuesday afternoon, just as the Hawks Magic games tipping off with the rest of the play-in games. We are here to fully dive deep with all of our thoughts about this Lakers Wolves matchup that we won't see until Saturday. And I don't think our takes are going to change too much with nothing else going on in between these two teams. But what's going on, man? Before we dive into everything, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Tom. It feels weird. It's definitely weird that we don't have the crunch of the play-in creating a bunch of uncertainty and these quick turn times. It's going to be, there's been so much research on my end heading into this, and I'm sure there is I know there is on yours as well. After we do this pod, I feel like we get to relax for a couple of days and watch basketball, which is a little bit of a different experience from what this is usually like, where it's Lakers play. All right, we got to research the next game. Lakers play. Got to research the next game, and there's really no break. So I'm looking forward to the games tonight, the games tomorrow, the games after that, and I'm sure I'll find more. I'm sure maybe my perspective will change a little bit here or there around the margins, but I am looking forward to feeling kind of calm and confident for the next few days, knowing that the bulk of the work is behind us. The takes are behind us. The takes are on the record. And then it's just up to the team to go get it done.
Definitely. We will, I'm sure, dive into a full season recap if and when that comes to give you some context for how this team performed in the summer. But for now, we are in our playoff mode as well. We went live on our Discord discussing our initial thoughts as soon as the Clippers-Warriors game ended, and we got some clarity on the Lakers matchup. So just diving straight into it, Tim, let's kind of set the table for folks who might not be as familiar with the Minnesota Timberwolves and give them a bit of their rotation. Now, their starters so far have been consistently, when healthy, Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards, and Mike Conley, with Naz Reid, Dante DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Jalen Clark mixed in there as well. I expect that to be their top nine. I don't expect to see Dillingham or Ingles or anyone else. So let's dig into some of this rotation. We're pulling up on the screen these guys' defensive responsibilities first to give you a sense of who they're guarding, where they're guarding. So I guess we're going to dive into the Minnesota offense first. But as far as the rotations go, how do they slice up the pie there on defense?
Yeah, it's going to be like an 8.5-man rotation. Clark's going to play a little bit probably, but they've got a strong top five. They've got their three key substitutions. Mike Conley's going to check out first. They're going to get DiVincenzo in there quickly. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, a strong player. And what I'm showing on the screen is each of these players in this, I guess, 9-man total group sorted by what their defensive position estimate is, from a 1 to a 5. 1 being you're guarding only point guards, 5 being you're guarding only centers. We see on one end of the spectrum, you've got your Nas, your Mike Conleys, your DiVincenzos. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got Rudy Gobert, who's guarding a lot of centers, 62% of the time. Only 16% of the time he's guarding power forwards, not guarding ones, twos, or threes all that much. And so this can give you a little bit of a feel for positionally how they have matched up on the season. On the far right, we've got our matchup difficulty tab. Our column, you can see that Jaden McDaniels taken on really tough matchups. Next highest has been Clark, then then Randle, then Edwards. All the way at the bottom, we've got Naz Reid, Mike Conley, DiVincenzo, Gobert, and Ant kind of in the middle. So in terms of who they guard, that's what it looks like. We calculate our defensive roles at B-ball index, and so their point of attack defenders, taking lead guard ball handlers, are Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jalen Clark, and Jaden McDaniels. McDaniels can certainly play as a wing stopper as well. He's got really strong versatility, but those are the guys that are on-ball defenders. They're going to try to take your top option, and we also see them with high matchup difficulty. It makes sense. You've got Mike Conley and Dante DiVincenzo as chaser defenders, more of off-ball guards. They're still out there guarding dudes. They're still rotating, but they are not taking on that lead ball handler. Then we have Anthony Edwards, very interestingly, in a helper role, along with Naz Reid and Julius Randle. These are roles where you are an off-ball kind of wing, big man defender. rotating. We see players like Ant that are superstars sometimes in this role because they're trying to conserve energy on defense so that they can expend it on offense. And what I will give him a shout out for is one, he tends to up his game in the playoffs from an effort standpoint, but two, he's in a helper role. He's not in the low activity role. Sometimes we see guys in the low activity role. Steph Curry's over there this year. And that means he's not guarding anybody, nor is he rotating well. Ant, his matchup difficulty is not that bad. He's still more of an off-ball guy with how he's deployed, but he's rotating decently, as we see with the helper label, and he's also got decent matchups. So he's in more of a respectable off-ball role. So I can live with that. But if you pull him onto on-ball inactions, it'll be a little bit different for him. Of course, you do that every game, but it would be a little bit different for him if he's needing to guard a Luka or an Austin, and he's being pulled into ball screens all day long or ISO all day long. Naz Reid and Randle as helpers, same sort of deal, more traditional roles for bigs, and then Gobert's an anchor big, heavy drop coverage guy.
I was just going to throw in, it's interesting, Ant went back to that helper role. Last year, his defensive role was a wing stopper, as they needed a bit more from him in that respect. So he's got it in him. He had a nice defensive season last year, so he's capable of it. And something we talked about in kind of our initial reaction pod was that it's a big task if you do want to move him onto a Luka or a LeBron in those starting lineup matchups, which we'll get into a bit deeper here in a moment. But he's definitely capable of it, but it definitely sacrifices something on, in the give and take.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I will note, going back to the series last year when Minnesota played Dallas, which I think is something we can try to learn from, we saw them in, maybe I'm jumping the gun here a little bit, but I think matchups will be a key talking point on both sides for this series. And learning from the past, looking at how Minnesota tried to deploy their personnel, which is not congruent, but it's very similar to what they have this year. They went in game one against Luka, very heavy Jaden McDaniels as the top guy, and there wasn't really anywhere close to a number two. Game two, it was heavy McDaniels again with some Kyle Anderson as a not close second, but he's in his own tier. Same thing for game three. In game four, down 3-0, they decided to put Anthony Edwards as Luka's primary defender. Then Kyle Anderson and Jaden McDaniels went down to third. And a close third, but third. And then in game five, they started Kyle Anderson on Luka. Ant was a tier below him, and then McDaniels kind of a distant third. So Jaden McDaniels, they've tried this. I'm sure Minnesota fans remember he was their Luka guy for 3 games. They lost all 3 games. And then, backs against the wall, they went to Anthony Edwards. So I wonder if we see some different options on Luka. I think they've got a couple different guys that they can try to deploy. I think we're going to see I think we're going to see McDaniels. I think we're going to see some Ant. We might see some Randle. There are different ways that they can try to play this. But one thing to keep in mind if they do put Anthony Edwards on Luka is, Tom, do you want to guess which game of that series he almost fouled out of and had 5 fouls?
Anthony Edwards? I'm guessing it's that first game he got put on Luka.
Exactly. He had 1 foul in game 1, 2 in game 2, 2 in game 3, 5 in game 4, and 2 in game 5. Point to me where he guarded Luka. So that could be a factor. If that would be a nightmare scenario if you are Minnesota and you do put Ant on Luka and he gets 2 or 3 quick fouls, then you're in trouble. Then you're in real big trouble. McDaniels, he had 4, 2, and 5 fouls over those first 3 games, being Luka's primary defender. Luka's going to draw fouls. And so there's going to be somewhat a war of attrition. I've already seen Minnesota fans complaining about it. And games haven't even started yet. That will be something to monitor, is how many, they have some options. I don't know how many of them are great options. I don't think any of them are perfect options, but how many are even viable deep into games once the foul trouble starts racking up? That will be certainly something to monitor and can change how minutes end up looking for this group. But for the most part on the season, this has been a very stable rotation. When you look at how many minutes their lineups have played together, it's a ton compared to what the Lakers have done this year, as their team has changed a bunch. And it's a ton compared to Golden State, who I also scouted in preparation for round 1 and didn't need it. But having looked at them, having looked at the Lakers, and looking at this team, this starting group, they've played like 1,400 possessions together. And they have pretty rigid times where they're bringing guys in and out. They know what they want to do with their rotation. If they get in foul trouble, that's going to make them a little bit uncomfortable. Or if they decide, we can't have Mike Conley on the court, or we can't have X player on the court, it's going to make things challenging for them. So a team with the Lakers that's gone through so much change and angst and turnover throughout the year, they've built up some resilience and they've needed to adapt. Minnesota has been lucky in that they haven't had to, but I do wonder if that can play a factor if they are hit with that kind of turmoil in a playoff series.
Okay, that's good context for their rotation and some of the guys that we will be focusing on here on both sides of the ball. I think we should transition first into the Minnesota offense and the Lakers defense on that side of the ball. Then we'll transition into the Minnesota defense and the Lakers offense a little bit later in the pod. So, Tim, here are some of the offensive four factors for the Wolves. They're 12th in effective field goal percentage, 18th in turnover percentage, 14th in offensive rebounding percentage, and 8th in free throw rate. For the Lakers defense, it's a very close. They're pretty much identical on a lot of these. Lakers defense gives up the 13th they're 13th in effective field goal percentage, 18th in turnover percentage, 20th in offensive rebound percentage, and 7th in free throw rate. So getting a look at this Minnesota offense, and we'll dive deep into the play types. And obviously, it's going to start at the head of the snake with Anthony Edwards. And something I wanted to bring up first with you is how the Lakers guarded them in that February 27th matchup and what we've seen out of Ant over the past few weeks. Teams have been doubling him hard, and he has been a more willing passer from my eyes, where I've seen him give up the ball and allow his other four guys to play with an advantage. And looking at his playmaking talent, and other B-ball injects playmaking metrics, he has a B+ grade among rotation guards. He's D in efficiency, an F in versatility, but an A- in drive assist points per 75. So how do you expect the Lakers to defend him? I will just posit, I think they're going to lean into a lot of how they played him in that first game, icing side ball screens, greening, strong side zoning him, asking him to take and make mid-range pull-ups, and trusting his guys on the weak side. Is that, is there anything else you want to add to that, or what should the Lakers do to focus on taking away Ant?
Yeah, I think sending help is probably the right approach. It's what LA's defaulted to since, Tom's February? When did we start? January, February? We started seeing LA.
Late January, that New York game in New York.
Mm-hmm. Since then, they've had a fastball in terms of the kind of help that they're willing to send, and they've had a lot of success just continuing to send it over and over again. I haven't quite seen, and it's not at a playoff level where I'm like triple checking every single individual play, but I haven't noticed the kind of like LA runs that, teams counter it well. LA needs to go to a second option, teams counter that. So we haven't quite needed to see LA play that chess match when it comes to the tactics there. And that can be concerning. But it's more of an unknown than anything. But I do think that's a good starting point. When it comes to Ant, he is a strong pick and roll player. He's a strong isolation scorer and a really, really good and high volume 3-point shooter. He is
pull-up specifically.
Yes, sixth best in the entire NBA in 3-point pull-up shot making efficiency. And on the volume he's shooting, like, it's even more impressive. He's at 40% this season on pick and roll pull-up threes. 54% of his pick and roll shots are threes. He's second in the NBA in pick and roll threes made per game. That is the way he wants to cook you. He is like, his most comfortable attack is pick and roll pull-up three against drop coverage. He's not going to get that in this series. And so that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable. In mid-range, he's not quite as effective of a scorer. He's 414th in mid-range pull-up shot making efficiency this season, 39% on pull-up twos in his pick and roll game. So very different. That's nearly the same percentage on threes versus twos. Now, of course, the twos are going to be more heavily contested. He's strong at the rim, but like that 3-point game is where I really worry. That's where you need to make sure you've got someone at the level of the screen. If a screen's happening in ISO, you need to make sure you're ready to sit on those pull-up jumpers. But another thing you can do if you're LA, in addition to sending some of that help, is I think you can also shade him a bit in a certain direction.
Yeah.
When we look at his driving game this season, he has a very strong tendency to go left, and he's so much more effective going left compared to going right. He's scoring 0.94 points per possession on drives going to his left, and only 0.81 points per possession going to his right. And this is a trend, both from a frequency and efficiency standpoint, we have seen for the last 4 seasons from him. So in the regular season, this is not stuff teams are deep diving quite as much. In the playoffs, this is something I certainly expect the Lakers and other opponents to be looking into and trying to play into. Force him to his right a little bit. Now, he's right-handed, but he's a strong left-handed driver. And he does get to the rim at the same rate going both ways. Sometimes that's the difference. Sometimes it's, okay, if you make Tim go to his right, he'll get to the rim, but going to his left, he's only taking pull-ups. And that's good to know. For Ant, not the case. He gets to the rim about at the same rate both ways, but his pull-up shooting is very different. Going on 2-pointers, pulling up, he shoots 43% going left and 24% going right. On pull-up threes, on drives, he's shooting 35% going left, 13% going right on very low volume. So it's we're approaching Mike Conley, I think was someone I looked at several years ago with this. Of course, Jamal Murray, as people have clowned me about, he had a similar tendency where going one direction, he's much more willing and capable of shooting pull-up threes compared to going to the other. And so that could be something we see the team lean into. I wouldn't be surprised to see them ice ball screens on the right wing so he can't go middle towards the left. But if he's on the left wing, then be a little bit more willing to let him go towards the middle of the court. So that could be something we see the team do. Just because he's rarely taking those pull-up threes going to his right, it wouldn't shock me. I think it would shock everybody live to see it, but LA might be able to get away with going under a screen here and there if he's going to his right. Now, he can just try to step back to his left or dribble back over to his left. But when teams have gone under his ball screens, it has been successful that direction, not as much the other. So that is what I'd be looking at. You're not going to try to drop against him. You might be able to get away with it if he's going the certain direction, but I do think he's someone in general that I expect to see the Lakers need to hedge, blitz, or switch against in order to not let him dice them up as a pick and roll player.
Well, what we've seen throughout the season and I'm just operating based off of what we've seen from the Lakers over the past 3 months or so, has been a willingness to switch everything, even when Jackson's out there. Not all the time. They'd still do some hedge and drop with Jackson, and depending on the player. But for the most part, they're willing to let you switch anyone onto anyone. You want Luka on ball? Okay, you can have it. You want Austin on ball? Okay, you can have it. And their answer has been this rim protection by committee, this perimeter defense by committee, where they will push you toward one of the sides of the court, bring up that strong side zone. And my concern is that in that coverage, and it's not a bad thing for the defense, for the offensive player to try to force string things through 2 guys. But Ant's one of those rare athletes and finishers where if he really wants to force the issue, if he's really feeling it, he might be able to still get around 2 of those guys, even if 2 of them are 6'6" or so. He's strong, he's athletic, he's agile, and he's got great hands in finishing around the rim. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe we'll get to their defense later. I think Gobert is an underrated perimeter defender, but I actually think that where he might get played off in this series might come more on the offensive end in terms of that spacing not being as impactful and him. Yeah. So we'll dig in more into that later, but in terms of how the Lakers defensive scheme as it is matches up, that's switching everything, I think, is going to at least limit the quality of those pull-ups from Ant and could suppress some of his efficiency.
Yeah, I think so, especially throughout the regular season. So much of the way Ant has taken pull-up threes is in ball screens against drop, and those are open shots, or mostly open shots. He's not going to get that against switching. He might be able to create some space and get some open ones, but just looking at the percentage of his looks that will be at that same level of quality, it's just not going to be there. So he's a great scorer. I think he's still going to get his, But if you can take away his bread and butter, you have to make him like find other solutions. And if you're LA, I think you can live to an extent with him trying to beat you with a bunch of contested pull-up jumpers. It is the uncontested ones that really scare me. One thing that I am worried about a little bit is that not just the size of Minnesota, but the size of Minnesota along with LA doing what we talked about, where they might try to load up on the strong side, sag into the gaps a little bit. Depending on where it is on the court, you're trying to shrink the floor, make those driving angles tougher to go into. But what that could result in is just like with a zone defense, which LA may also look into this series, you don't quite have a body on a body for when a shot goes up. If those pull up contested jumpers do go up, and then Rudy Gobert is hanging out in the dunker spot and no one's close to him because they're several extra steps away because that's the way that the Lakers are defending with the scheme, he has a free, run to the rim and might get those second chances. And I just shared up on the screen our offensive rebounding crashing skill score along with the conversion. You see an AD still on here. We need to add in a current team, not just full team for the season, but Rudy Gobert and AD and Vando have been really good converting on offensive rebounds, along with Randle, McDaniels, and Hayes. Jordan Goodwin, shout out Jordan Goodwin, crashing like an MFer. He's been when a shot goes up, he is getting to the rim. But Jaden McDaniels is someone that, like, if you were looking at like who do we help off of, he might be someone that you look at. But if you leave him alone, he's going to crash. He's going to crash. They've got some of these guys that are a little bit higher on the crashing scale. Julius Randle, same thing. So that is the inherent downside whenever you are kind of molding and shifting your normal shell defense in such a way that you are taking one thing away, but you're giving something else up. And to me, this is what you give up, along with if Minnesota is going to run help beaters, you're potentially vulnerable there. But this absolutely has to be the starting point for LA. Send help.
So counterpoint, in the way Lakers have been giving up shots in this defense, often they're from the perimeter, could be long shot, long rebound situations. I will say again, with all the size that Minnesota has had for most of the season, just 14th in the league in offensive rebounding percentage. Post All-Star break, they're a little bit better at 12th, but it's not a massive strength where you might think they're dominating teams in the regular season. And they play pretty big all game. They got Reed coming off the bench. They got Randle in there, who's a big body and can bang down low. I don't know if he does that as much as I think Minnesota and the fans want him to. But, yeah, I guess it would worry me more if this were a top 5 established offensive rebounding team throughout the season.
Sure. Yeah. And there are certain lineups that they'll use that are strong offensive rebounding groups, like the Ant DiVincenzo, McDaniels, Randall, Gobert group. Like it's a 90th percentile offensive rebounding group. Their starting group, not as much. That's more average. Their third most, the other group with Ant, McDaniels, Randall, Gobert, 81st percentile. They've got some others that are really good. They have others that are very poor. The ones with Gobert off the court, not good, almost across the board. But the ones with Gobert, other than a couple of them that tend to have Mike Conley out there, are pretty strong. And when you throw in Nickeil Alexander-Walker, that's one of their best crashers out there. That helps when you take Conley out, put him in. So I think it will really depend on the moment. I think there will be a level of vulnerability, but a key to the series will be just like how bad is it? If LA can clean up the defensive boards and hold Minnesota one shot, this can be a quick series. I think part of like any path to victory for Minnesota has to do with winning the possession battle.
I agree.
And that's turnovers. And that's also this that we're talking about now with the rebound. So we got to monitor it. I'm still a little worried about it, but I'm with you that it's not like they're an elite offensive rebounding team or have been on the season and we're bad. Like they've been okay. And I'm worried about it, but there will be certain groupings where it will be more tenuous to try to send that help. Now, the other thing, like you talked about, where teams can look to attack the Lakers is perhaps on the perimeter. And looking at the three-point shooting of this Minnesota team, they certainly have a couple guys that are not three-point shooters or strong three-point shooters, but they've got a good number of A's and B's up here on the screen. headlined by Ant and DiVincenzo. Naz Reid's up there. Conley's up there. I know Reid hasn't shot as well lately. He's taking really hard shots. But Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Conley, Clark, even he doesn't attempt many, but a lot of guys that can probably knock a shot down if their man is an extra step and a half away from them and the closeout's a bit longer.
Let me ask you this, Tim, a little trivia for you. Where do you think Minnesota ranks in the percentage of their three-pointers made assisted?
I know it's low. I don't know how low. I know they're a big jump shooting or a big pull-up shooting team, not as much of a catch and shoot team. I'll say 22nd.
They're 29th in the league in the percentage of their three-pointers that are assisted, 78.2%. And they're second in the league, conversely, in the amount of those three-pointers that are unassisted. So a fifth of their threes are pull-ups that they make. That's huge, right? That's massive. And I think that speaks to what we're talking about while still contextualizing, like it's still only 20% of their three-point makes, right, are these pull-ups. They're still a good spot-up team. I think I have them as 8th in the league, most efficient, 1.081 points per possession. So those backside rotations are going to be key as well.
Yep, for sure. Now, can they find the right guys? I know we saw with the OKC games where some of their lead ball handlers, the team was like LA sent help. Their team was responding correctly with help beaters, and their lead ball handlers weren't finding them. If that's a problem for Anthony Edwards, again, this could be a quick series. If you can just get the ball out of his hands and make other guys make decisions, that's helpful. But even just stacking up Minnesota's playmakers and kind of ranking them in terms of minutes per game and stacking up their top guy against every other team's top guy and their second guy against every other team's second guy, their playmakers rank 24th, 25th, 27th, 22nd, 17th, 20th, 13th, 11th, and 19th compared to the other 30 teams for their like 9-man rotation. That is 25th overall in playmaking depth. And at the top level, their top guys are not great playmakers. In the middle, their guys are not great playmakers. Towards the end of their rotation, they've got guys that are better playmakers compared to other ends of benches. But this is a group that is not going to be, killing you with ball movement and quick decisions. And I think confusing them, sending help like this or playing zone or things like that could be part of the solution for LA to try to probe and poke at that weakness. And also close the possession gap. If they're getting an advantage from offensive rebounds, LA might be able to get an advantage from some turnovers with this stuff. And that is certainly part of how you can help win the games. Yeah,
I mean, we were talking before we hopped on about that Minnesota collapse in Milwaukee, where Milwaukee basically just played zone for the rest of the fourth quarter, went on a crazy run and eliminated like a 25-point lead by the Wolves. If you look at their data versus zone, as you mentioned, last in the league in terms of turnover percentile in zone situations. So they turn the ball over 14% of the time. Do you think the Lakers mixing in some zone here or there? Maybe when Jackson's not out there, the small ball lineup isn't super switchy. You think that'll be a viable option the Lakers can rely on?
So I'll say this. I don't know, but I think so. I think so.
Fair enough.
I think so because of how Minnesota's turned the ball over against it. And that's more than just an empty trip. That's also usually transition the other way. And so that's really helpful.
Oh, yeah.
And so that, almost bonus points for that. But then in addition to that, even just looking at their efficiency against zone, it's been helped by some good shooting luck, according to the synergy numbers. So they've overperformed their shot quality a bit.
That pull-up talent helps.
I think the pull-up talent does help. They are built like a team that should struggle a little bit with zone, but also that offensive rebounding, might be able to help give them some second chances. Again, they're not elite at it, but they do have some elite groups at it. I think it can be part of the solution. And so I don't know if it'll work, but what I do know is, or at least my preference is, I think you need to throw that punch if you're LA. You need to test them. You need to try it. It might be for 3 plays. It might be for 5 plays. It might be for 1 play. But if you try it for 3 plays and Minnesota spends half the shot clock figuring out what it is, and then the other half the shot clock, just passing the ball around the perimeter and then jacking up a contested 3, that's a good possession for me as a defense. And if they go do that a second time in a row and a third time in a row, and they don't have a plan, that should really, tell JJ, unleash the hounds. Let's keep doing this. As long as they're confused, as long as they're not attacking this with purpose, we should keep doing it. Now, if you run it in 2-3 plays in a row, they're running perfect zone beating sets, then you just stop. You just go away from it. You can use it as a change up here or there, maybe in after timeout situations, so that maybe Chris Finch spends a bunch of time drawing up a great set play and they can't run it anymore. So that can be useful. Or maybe every now and then just to be a change up, force the team to, recognize it, call out a different play, and then try to execute. But it can be something you go to with consistency if you test them and if they fail the test. But if they pass the test, you just back off of it. I don't think you want to die with zone, because zone tends to perform worse than man in general. Average zone defenses are worse than average man defenses. The great zone defenses are worse than the great man defenses at the NBA level with the talent that you're facing.
Yeah.
But it is just incumbent upon you as the defense to try, just to ask that tactical question and force the other team to coach and adjust.
Okay, Tim, so we talked a little bit about how Minnesota plays on offense. Just digging deeper into it, we talked about Anthony Edwards trying to get downhill, get to the basket, how the Lakers likely plan on defending that. What if they say, okay, you know what? We've been an efficient post-up team, including our passes this season, tied for 5th most efficient, 1.104 points per possession. Let's try to use this switching defense against them. We got Austin Reeves on Julius Randle. Let's target that. Or we're going to go at Luka Doncic. What do you think the Lakers can do to mitigate some of Minnesota's post-up efficiency in this series?
Yeah, I mean, you look at sending some help. Minnesota's not a great post. Like, they have some guys that post up. Gobert's not someone that I'm as worried about. Hell, we've seen Gabe Vincent on Gobert at times. Jackson Hayes is that same way. For both of these offenses, their starting center is not someone that is a great fit for an offense that's attacking switching defense. You want someone that can, go post somebody up. Julius Randle, he can post somebody up though.
Yeah,
Nasri can post some guys up.
Even
they've got some options. Ant can put. Yeah, good call out. I think in both teams really. LeBron, Rui, Luka, you've got some good post options for LA as well. But yeah, if that's something that is problematic for the team, you look at sending some help. You can do that in like a million different ways. You can do it with just digging. You can double from the high side. You can double from the weak side. You can double from the baseline. You can do what we've seen the Lakers do at times where they don't necessarily fully double team, but they've got another player just a step or two behind to be there if they do try to drive. Against a Julius Randle that's much more of a bully ball kind of guy, I mean, I think you mix things up a little bit, try to induce him into some mistakes by showing him more than one look. But I don't think digs are the right way to approach it with him. He's more of a power player than a finesse player. And so either hard doubles or having that guy, maybe playing him high, forcing him towards the baseline, and then having someone stand there. So if he spins into it, he maybe commits a charge, something like that. I haven't seen a ton of LA sending this kind of help on the season, but that could be something that fits well against the style of play we see from Randle. Those are some of the first things that come to mind for me. Tom, anything that you think LA might want to throw out there?
I mean, you could throw out the scram switch. We haven't seen that too much from the Lakers.
Explain that for the audience.
So you got a guy trying to get post position, right? He's already went up and set the ball screen, and he pulled the guard down to the block with him. In that middle time where the ball isn't coming yet, and he's still trying to get to his spot, you got a guy who's within the vicinity that's a DFS or a Rui or a LeBron that's maybe a little bit better equipped to guard that guy. You switch them off ball really quick, and this requires like a great communication so that you can both like sprint to where you need to be. Otherwise, they're going to skip that ball over to the weak side corner and get an open look. But I think we could see that. Looking at some of the film for the small ball lineup, we saw them do this a couple times and messed up a couple times and successfully did it a couple times. But it's not something that they've done terribly frequently. So in that situation where like I have footage of Austin battling with Şengün and having green side help with the strong side zone, doing just fine. But Julius Randle, somebody who is not so finesse, that's not so agile, that's like you said, a bully ball post up offensive player. I think you want to get Austin out of there. Like, even if you double, if Austin's on one of those sides, Julius can probably spin through him and get a left-handed hookup.
Yeah, I think you want to get him out of there. What we could also see LA do and what they've done in the past is for the duration of time where you are mismatched before the ball's in the post, front it. Make it hard to get that pass in, front the post, stand fully in front of him. And Julius Randle, he's not like the biggest guy. Like if you're fronting Rudy Gobert, he's a big body. He's got great wingspan. He can stick his arm up and you can feed that pretty easily. Julius Randle's not quite as big of a player. Not quite as tall and long of a player, I guess I should say.
Yeah, lengthwise. So, he's a big dude.
He's a big dude. He is a smaller target than a Gobert, than an Anthony Davis, than some other players when it comes to trying to feed the post pin, which is how you post up against a front. But you do that on the front side, and then on the back side, you have someone kind of sag over and be your lob protection. If they do try to make that pass in, be there to go pick it off. We saw LA do this very successfully against Dallas. Dallas had a huge size advantage. They had multiple bigs on the court almost at all times. AD had great mismatches. They were trying to feed him, and they would spend like 6-7 seconds standing there trying to make a post entry pass and just killing shot clock time. And then sometimes when they would eventually try to make the pass, LA would pick it off. Or, they'd catch and then there'd be a double team and they wouldn't get something off of it. So you can make the offense indecisive and kill time with help like that, along with every other kind of help. It's vulnerable. There are things you can do as the offense to try to counter it. But if you're LA's defense, yeah, you can give up some size on the inside, but don't let them get the ball. Now, this also puts you in a worse rebounding position. So if Ant decides, hell, I can't make this post entry, let me just jack up a three. Even if he misses, now he's got Julius Randle with inside position on a guard. If that lob protection's over there, at least there's another player in the area that can try to help. But again, just like with these other kinds of help, where you take something away, you're also giving something up potentially, or you're at least you're vulnerable to. So I do expect that to be part of LA's formula. We've seen it from them before. Tom, like what you said with the scram switches, I think that can be part of it as well. Any sort of like pick and roll switch, if the roller just kind of goes and spaces out to the weak side and you've got another player standing over there, like just kind of minimize the mismatches. Yeah. Instead of Austin on Gobert and Rui on Randle, hang on, that's a bad example. Instead of DFS on McDaniels, we'll say, and Austin on Gobert, like have those two guys switch if they're both standing on the perimeter.
Yeah.
While you can just minimize the mismatches wherever possible. It's going to be hard to get them back to perfectly normal as you would like, but make Minnesota work. Make them have to go to a second and a third action. And, the more time you can kill by confusing them with zone, by fronting the post, by switching and killing these actions, the more often we are going to see them have to settle for pull-up jumpers. And that's what LA wants.
So another aspect of the Minnesota offense I wanted to bring up, we touched on this in our first initial reaction piece too, was a weakness on a weakness, for lack of a better phrase, with Minnesota's lowest transition team in the NBA. Just 15.3% of their opportunities come in transition. They're the most half-court heavy team in the league. Transition is somewhere where the Lakers can be vulnerable, especially with speed and turnovers. And Minnesota right now is 25th in the NBA in pace. Post All-Star break, they're 21st, a little bit higher. So they've been playing a little bit faster since they've played better. So we might want to be ready for them to maybe try to push the pace a little bit. But limiting those turnovers, because Minnesota's 15th most efficient, 1.13 points per possession in transition. But for transition, that's not great. Like, you don't obviously want to give up live ball turnovers. With Luka, LeBron, Austin, it happens sometimes. That is not something that hopefully has an opportunity to bury the Lakers the way it would with some of these other teams.
Yeah, I don't expect Minnesota's ball pressure to be as much of an issue for LA as it might be for some other teams. Just because, between Luka, LeBron, Austin, if they're all on the court, someone's got a decent matchup to be able to dribble the ball up the court and initiate the offense. You don't have to try to go up against Jaden McDaniels all 94 feet or something like that.
Yeah.
And to your point, the easy buckets you get off of transition are not as big of a part of Minnesota's offense as I think fans would want. That's easy stuff. In LA, I think fifth or sixth in terms of how frequently they allow opponents to get into transition. So, like you said, a weakness on a weakness. Teams run on the Lakers. However, Minnesota doesn't run. If one of those things changes, it'll be noteworthy. And I think one of those things has to change. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. Is Minnesota getting an extra boost of easy shots this offense usually isn't getting, yet is still a top 10 offense? Or like, is LA's defense getting a boost on what has been one of their biggest weaknesses, and all of a sudden a very good defense is becoming an even better defense? So I think that'll certainly be something to monitor, and it's an effort thing. It's an offense thing, honestly, along with an effort thing. You got to get back on defense, but if you don't turn the ball over, you're not going to be giving up those shots to begin with. And another thing with it too that I think is worth watching is in terms of the kinds of ends. How should I phrase this? As an offense, if I am going to miss a shot at the rim, it is so much more likely that the other team is going to get to run in transition.
Yeah.
Much more likely than if I miss from mid-range or miss from three. Of course, a live ball turnover is the worst, but if I'm going to miss a shot and it's at the rim against a great rim protector like Rudy Gobert, there's a good chance that Minnesota will have an opportunity to run. So that is something to keep an eye on as well, because there have been stretches of the year where LA's team and best players have struggled at the rim, and Minnesota's got one of the like I don't know, top tier. If you're going to name who's the best rim protector over the past decade, Rudy Gobert's got to be there, or one of the guys in the top of that conversation.
Yeah, he's not quite been himself and his DPOY self over this season, but he's still impactful there. And we'll get to the Minnesota defense side of the ball here in a second, but touching on any other Minnesota offensive things that you find relevant, looking at a lot of their play-by-play data, Tim, like their play type data, they're not elite in many places. They're pretty 10 to 15th rank, in maybe 8th in a couple, but they're pretty much slightly above average in a lot of these play types. So there are any other play types that you're worried about, or have a certain scheme that you'd like to see the Lakers attack?
Yeah, when I look at what they do frequently, where they're a threat, so DiVincenzo as an off-screen shooter, he's going to be running around pin downs, flare screens, things like that.
The Lakers just switch everything off ball.
Exactly. So I am less worried about that.
We saw him take out Clay like that.
Mm-hmm. And where the vulnerability is against defenses that are switching those actions is by slipping those screens as the screener. So your McDaniels or your Gobert or your Randle or your Naz Reid, slip the screen while the defense is switching and then go get a cut towards the rim. Minnesota doesn't cut that much. This is not like the vulnerability in this kind of defense isn't really built into their normal approach. So it is for Golden State. It would be an issue versus Golden State. It was something I was worried about against Golden State. It's not going to be as much of an issue against this team. So that is something they do a lot. Not as much of an issue. Now, it does still demand that you have multiple defenders kind of paying attention to it. In order to switch, you got to have multiple guys paying attention. And so that can help the 1v1 attacks on the strong side if some of your weak side defenders aren't able to rotate. If I'm trying to front the post and the guy that's taking away the lob from the weak side corner is also guarding Dante, he might not be able to do that anymore. If Dante's running off a stagger, that's how I'm going to be able to feed my post player. Or if Anthony Edwards is trying to ISO and LA's trying to creep up some help, they might not be able to if suddenly there are flare screens happening. And now there's a double gap created. He's looking to drive it, and he's got a kick out option to a shooter. So I am more worried about this off-screen game occupying help defenders more so than I am worried about Dante DiVincenzo getting a bunch of shots off from it. So that is something I'm keeping an eye on. The other thing, and I think a big part of this series is going to be Julius Randle.
Yeah.
Can he, like when we look at the top players in the series, I think Luka's the top guy. I think Ant and LeBron are kind of in that next tier in some order. And then Randle and Reeves are kind of the next men up. Can Randle close the gap on LeBron, or can Randle vastly outperform Austin Reeves? I don't know.
You know, I'd probably throw Reed into that Austin group too.
You think so? Okay.
I think when he's good, he is really good. Now, consistency might be a thing. He had a really poor shooting game against the Lakers and that last time they saw him, but I wouldn't. I think there's an argument at least he might be a B tier of that version of that tier.
Okay. I mean,
A
it's
sub
certainly
tier,
at
if you will.
moments. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and he's a fluid athlete. He
yeah,
can dribble the ball. I think LA's in a better spot than some other teams would be in terms of who they'll have guarding him and taking some of that away.
sure.
But maybe he can get his post game going a little bit.
He'll be
He
able to
can
get a
certainly
shot
space the
off.
floor. Yeah, he's a big body. He's going to be able to get some shots that are a little bit more open than
Yeah,
someone who's a bit shorter, given
yep.
the matchups he's going to have. So he'll be someone to keep an eye on. With Randle, I don't think this is going to be a great series for him. You got to watch out for his ISO game and his post game. I feel like LA is set up with multiple defenders that are not built in a lab to defend him, but they're the right kinds of guys to defend. Between Rui, LeBron, DFS. Now he's a bully on the inside. I don't want LeBron having to expend a ton of energy for the full game on him. I don't think he's going to have to with these other options LA has. Of course, you want DFS being able to take on like an Ant. But Rui, I think, is going to get plenty of time on Randle, can bang with him a little bit. LeBron can, DFS can. And if you can guard him 1v1 and not have to send help, you're in a much better spot as a defense. With Ant, I think the solutions to guarding him involve sending help. With Randle, if you can defend him adequately without that help, you're in a much better place. And just like with Anthony Edwards, there are some tendencies with Julius Randle that LA should be aware of that might help them just play him 1v1 more effectively. When he is a post player, he wants to get over to his left shoulder to shoot with his right hand. He's going to be very left block heavy and go over his left shoulder to the middle. On the right block, he still wants to go over his left shoulder to the baseline. When he's driving, he wants to drive left. He is a higher effectiveness guy driving left than right. He is a higher rim frequency guy driving left than right. He's a better pull-up shooter going left compared to right. And so in every kind of facet of his game on the inside or the outside, he has that tendency to go that one direction. And so if you can take that away or you anticipate it, you might be able to draw some offensive fouls. You might be able to get him to turn the ball over by traveling or losing the ball. You might be able to force him into some tough shots. So I hope they're looking at those numbers. I'm sure they are. Of course, it's not the only thing he does. He's got some counters in his game. But if you can take away more of where he's stronger, you can limit his effectiveness. He's a 78th percentile post efficiency guy, only a 29th percentile ISO guy. And he ISOs a little bit more than he posts up. But between the two, that's a fair bit of 1v1 game. And the only guy that's really doing things more often than that as an on-ball initiator is Anthony Edwards on this team. So Ant pick and roll, Randle 1v1 defense. Those are kind of the two things that I've highlighted in addition to like box Gobert the hell out and don't give them easy buckets in transition. Those are the things that you need to keep an eye on with this Minnesota offense. And if they're able to pick the right matchups and they're able to run help beaters against how LA is sending help, and they're able to strip away that extra help and just play, Randle on Austin 1v1 on the inside or Ant on Luka 1v1 on the outside, things like that. That's where they'll get in a rhythm and find success. As long as LA can maintain the integrity of their help defense, they'll be okay. So that is kind of the thing to watch. Is LA ever going to be scared off from sending their help? If so, we're in a bad spot. And that is something I'm worried about throughout the full course of this playoffs. If LA wants to get deep, they're going to have guys step up and be able to defend 1v1 a little bit because these teams are going to be smart with help beaters. We'll see how Minnesota does with it. But it's not like LA has no weak points on defense. They have some weak points. They prop them up with good help defense, which is the right thing to do. But that doesn't mean they're still going to be good if you strip away the help defense. So that's what's going to keep me up at night for the past handful of nights here as we're looking for the series is, can Minnesota run help beaters? If so, what do you do if you're LA? Because you can't take Austin off the court. You can't take Luka off the court. Like you got to find other answers defensively, and that's going to be tough.
And I'll float out one more that I'm going to have my eye on. We'll see how the playoff whistle goes. But with Minnesota being the 8th in free throw rate on their offensive end, they got Ant draws 6.3 free throws a game. Randle draws 4.9. Even Gobert draws 3.8. That's a meaningful amount of free throws. If the Lakers are able to defend without fouling the way they were in that first OKC game, I think they'll be able to have a strong advantage in that respect.
Yeah, for sure. Don't give him anything easy. The
Yeah.
best shot in basketball is a free throw. So don't give him free throws. Don't give him transition. Make him earn stuff. Make him shoot over contests. That has to be the focus if you're LA.
All right, Tim, let's pivot here to the Lakers offense against the Wolves defense. Let me give you some 4-factor numbers here. The Wolves are surrendering the 6th best effective field goal percentage. They're forcing the 9th best turnover percentage, 12th in offensive rebound rate, and 8th in free throw rate on defense as well. Now, they're uniquely skilled with their size and their Jaden McDaniels length with Ant out there as somebody who I think can be an impactful help defender. But I think the Lakers' consequent size with Luka not only being 6'6", but being a big ball handler, having to put Conley on Reeves or Rui is a positive in the Lakers respect, and then Randle not maybe having quite the same foot speed to keep up with LeBron, I think just on a cursory glance gives the Lakers a bit of an advantage, even not counting in some of the scheme that I think can bring out some weaknesses in Conley and Gobert and in Reed.
Yeah, I think if we just look at the Lakers' freelance offense, not doing anything fancy, not doing. I mean, I hope they do things that are good. I hope they run the good scheme. They win games when they run good scheme. But just looking at matchups, there isn't really a way for Minnesota to cover up all of the potential areas of interest, I'll say, for LA.
Areas of
conservative.
opportunity.
Yeah. Between the ISO game of LeBron, Austin, and Luka, between the post game of LeBron, Luka, and Rui, between the pick and roll game of LeBron, Austin, and Luka, like you're either going to have someone that can't stay in front, can't hang with you in the post, or can't navigate ball screens. I don't really think Minnesota has somebody that can do all three of those things. That does it well. McDaniels is good at several of them, but not all of them. And that was apparent last playoffs. I was looking through some film and watching him fall down like a bowling pin against double drag against multiple teams this year.
Yeah.
Randle, he can stay in front decently. He can defend in the post, but navigating ball screens is not his game. Gobert, great at the rim, better on the perimeter than he gets credit for. I think people go a little bit too far with some of the hate there, but he's also someone that, like, of course, not navigating ball screens. That's not his game. Name a player. They've got some hole in their game. And even if you've got a guy that is very well-rounded, if you disagree with me right now, if you're a Minnesota fan listening to this, great. You've got one guy locked up. We've got 2 to 3 more between post, ISO, and pick and roll that we can go to. Yeah. And this Lakers offense does not need to force feed through Luka to be effective. I think Austin can drop 40 points on your head. He can drop 30 points on your head, and that's not a problem.
You just got to get the ball to the weak side.
Exactly. Yeah, like find a matchup. Go hunt the duck. Go, figure out where the hole is at any given moment. There's no need to try to, and I've used this, I think this is a multiple years old example. You don't go to McDonald's and yell and scream at them for a Whopper. They don't have it. It's not available. Go take what's there. If LeBron is being guarded by Mike Conley, go take it. We don't need to go, have Luka try to score over Rudy Gobert and ISO if LeBron's got Mike Conley on him. Find the best matchup. You're going to have one somewhere. So just as a starting point, at least with the Lakers starting group, that to me is very interesting. I think it makes me hopeful. And even throughout the game when they only have 2 or sometimes one of those guys on the court, you're going to have some good options available. So that's a really great place to start if you're the Lakers, even before you open up the playbook, knowing that we've got something we can fall back on when the shot clock does get under 10.
So let's talk to me a little bit about how Minnesota defends ball screens, what they're looking to do. We did talk about this also in our initial reaction, but I'm sure you got a little bit more. And for the people who haven't heard it yet, talk about how Minnesota will likely plan on defending some of these actions, where we've seen, Dallas was able to switch their big out onto Luka often. I still think Luka, and I think you'd agree, Luka's going to be able to cook Gobert and getting step back threes almost whenever he wants. But I think what you're saying is his containment and a lot in deterring rim drives and all that. It's a little bit underrated and maybe under spoken about in the analysis so far this series.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, he's a little awkward with his motion. I mean, he's a big guy. These big people, they
Yeah.
don't, they're not out there to be ballroom dancers, but what they do have is really long arms. And so even if you do step back, sticks those long arms up, he's probably going to get a good contest. Even if you get by him, there's a good chance that they can recover. And so that is where just, going after the biggest guy out there may not be the best thing to do. Now, if you can get good separation, get a decent look from three, I like it. Especially if you pull that rim protector, that not rim protector, but that rebounder away from the rim, maybe you can get some advantages. But
Yeah, I mean,
I would.
and rim protector, if you run an action on the other side of the ball, get somebody a chance to attack without, Gobert around.
Yeah, but like if you are Luka and Gobert's on you and you can get the defense to send a little help, and then LeBron can like stampede cut, catch the ball, get all the way to the rim, and finish with Gobert standing at the top of the key, I'd much prefer that over a Luka step back contested three. I'm gonna sit in my chair and giggle at the Luka step back contested threes. It's like that's not, what are you gonna do? So
it's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen. Oh yeah, he's definitely gonna hit some. But if I don't want this series to hinge upon Luka shooting, 38% on heavily contested step back threes against 7-footers. I want to be able to get to the rim. I want to be able to get some good looks. I want to be able to get some catch and shoot open threes. Like the offense can't fall, they can't be goaded into deciding, it's ISO time, let's go cook, and what that looks like is just a bunch of step backs. You got to be able to pressure the defense, get them into rotation, and then you'll be able to find good stuff at the rim on your corner threes. So yeah, LA's going to have some options. Don't get complacent, don't settle too much. In terms of how Minnesota guards ball screens, which I think is going to be an important part of the series with LeBron, with Austin, with Luka. What they've done on the season is they have primarily been a hedge team. If you combine how often they're hedging and blitzing all together, 8th most in the NBA. And it's like 45, 46% of the time for them. They drop the 9th most in the NBA, and they rarely switch. They're 27. When we dig in at an individual player level, Rudy Gobert is about 60-40 drop hedge. He's switching only 4% of the time. I don't expect him to be switching onto Luka as a first option, a second option, or a third option. Luka's probably going to be able to get him on him a little bit, but that is not going to be something I expect Minnesota to willingly give away. Julius Randle, he has more of a balanced diet of his coverage types. Naz Reid, he is primarily about 60% of the time a hedge and blitz guy, about 20% for each of the other two. And so depending on who you are facing, you're going to get some different styles of defense. But at a team level, this is a team that if you run a ball screen, they're going to have someone in your face. They're going to have two on the ball, and they're going to use their size, their length, and their speed on the back end to rotate on a string. And, you hit the skip pass. You got a 2v1. They take the first guy away and contest a shot. And then you try to hit it, pass it over, make the one more pass, and they've recovered to it. And they can recover, and they can do that well. This team is not as good as it was last year defensively. In terms of how well they've played on a string, how well they've avoided mistakes, but they're still kind of playing that style of defense where they're going to have a little bit of chaos going on, but they're going to take away your initial action and then try to recover to wherever you get the ball. In terms of how they played LA this year, I don't think it matters quite as much because Luka was only on the team for one of those games, and in that game, Randle and Gobert weren't playing. But when we look at how Minnesota defended Dallas last playoffs, it was the series that they hedged and blitzed the most. Yeah. It was the series that they dropped the least. They weren't switching willingly much at all. A couple of the games they did, most of the games they didn't. They started out, the most they ever dropped was 35% in the first game, and it plummeted from there. And so if it's possible they decide, hey, Luka and Austin hit a bunch of pull-up threes to beat us. We won't let you pass. We're never going to give up a numbers advantage off ball. It's possible. I don't think it's realistic. I expect this team to start off doing what they usually do and kind of lean on their primary defense, which is hedging and blitzing. When we look at how that fared against Luka last playoffs, it didn't go so well. They were scoring 1.5 points per possession on soft hedges. Luka and the Mavs scoring 1.42 points per possession against drop. They were scoring 1.2 points per possession against switching. All of this is elite offense. Now against hard hedges, like a show and recover, it was 0.75 points per possession. And 60% of the time when Dallas would run a ball screen, they'd get nothing from it. They'd have to kind of reset and then attack again. So that worked well for Minnesota. And then outright blitzing, same sort of deal, only 0.55 points per possession. And about 40% of the time, Dallas had to reset. So those more aggressive coverages are what worked better for Minnesota against Dallas. Don't be shocked to see some of that. I wouldn't be surprised if plan A is hedge, plan B is hard hedge, plan C is blitz, and then plan D is switch. But also expect the Lakers to like lean on the things they do most and the things they have done most of the season from a play calling standpoint and go to double drag. Go to Chicago action with the down screen into the handoff. Go to Miami action with the handoff into the ball screen. Those double screening actions, maybe a horns pick and roll where there's a screener on each side. Any of those screening actions where you've got two guys pulled up away from the rim and then the defense is hedging gives you a 3-on-2 that you can often turn into a 2-on-1 on the back end as the offense. And that is a read that I am very comfortable with Luka making, with Austin making, and with LeBron making. So I think LA's playbook, what they run most, is set up really well to attack the default coverage for Minnesota, as well as the default coverage for Minnesota against Luka in the past.
So a couple things I wanted to hit on. I was doing some film dive on just the Lakers. So I want to qualify this. Looking at some of the film from Indiana hedged quite a bit on Luka with Turner, who is a comparable defensive player, maybe a little bit more agile. I don't know. Pretty close. Luka was able to beat the hedge on the outside. So still push past and get around that initial hedge and draw that out. And he's able to get to the basket for a bucket, and then he's able to kick out. And then another thing I wanted to throw out, where I don't have the numbers on this, but I would imagine the way Dallas ran some of these ball screens were frequently with Lively and Gafford, the rim runners, the hard rollers. And the Lakers can do that with Jackson Hayes, but more frequently lately, they've been doing it with Rui. They've been doing it with DFS. And Luka being able to string that hedge out a little bit, draw that extra player out a little bit, and then hit the pop, I think is going to create opportunities. And then all you need is a hard closeout on that pop, and you swing it to the corner, even better shot. I think the Lakers have a clear advantage, the most clear advantage on this side of the ball, where they, through all of their different weapons, which you laid out beautifully, and all the different strengths they have and the amount of weapons and the slotting, is what I like to call it, how they slot against Minnesota's best defensive players. I think they're in the driver's seat for dictating what rotations and lineups Minnesota is going to have to throw out there to have a chance to compete with this team. And the ripples that come from that, Tim, and we talked a little bit about this before, but so let's say Mike Conley can't play 25 minutes a game in this series. He's averaging like 24 in the season. I don't think that's totally wrong, but that takes one of your few playmakers off of the court. You talked about their lack of playmaking talent in the first part of the pod, right? Let's say they trot out there and DiVincenzo, McDaniels, Reed, Randle. That comes with one of the worst effective field goal percentage shooting groups on Minnesota's highest possessions of various rotations. They're 10th percentile. So there's ripple effects that could affect how well they're able to perform on offense. Are you as optimistic as I am that the Lakers will be able to force Minnesota into playing some less, targetable players like Conley, or you mentioned Gobert is a little overstated, which I agree with, but do you think the Lakers can dictate who Minnesota feels comfortable playing on this side of the ball?
I think so. I think Conley's someone they can go after. Like, who's he going to guard? If he guards Austin can try to go after him. If he guards Luka, that's going to be a problem. Now, Luka torched him last Western Conference Finals, but Conley was playing hurt. He's not hurt. He's older, but he's not hurt. So maybe that helps him this time. He's been around average of the season as an ISO defender, but Luka's certainly better than average. But he's someone like I expect him to get played off the court more so than Gobert would be. And you talked about this on our chat yesterday or a couple days ago when we did our initial reactions. And to your point, that takes away a playmaker for Minnesota.
Yeah.
And that also directly hurts Gobert's effectiveness. I was looking at Gobert's usage, his points, his shots at the rim with Conley on versus off the court, and he is scoring several fewer points per 100 possessions with Conley off the court. He's getting several fewer shots at the rim with Conley off the court compared to on the court. His usage is down. His expected effective field goal percentage, just based on the locations of his shots, is exactly the same. But it's just that Conley finds Gobert. And when Conley's not out there, they're not finding him as often. So there's some relationship there. I do think that could be a factor. So that's one example of where maybe it helps their defense, but it's going to hurt their offense. And Minnesota's been a team that has some distinct identities with their starting group, with their bench groups. They've got the Dante Naz Reid thing going, and their bench groups play much faster than their starting groups do. And Conley is, when we look at the pace with him on court versus off court, you can kind of see that. He's a little bit more meticulous. If you kind of disrupt the rhythm and flow of the identity of their starters and bench, it might help you plug a couple of those holes defensively, but offensively, you're kind of working with a different style of play. And so that could be disruptive to them on the other end of the court.
So let me throw this at you, counterpoint. Okay, that lineup's supposed to help you defensively against this particular Lakers team. Let's see what they've done in their 224 possessions this year. Minus 8.9 differential, 21st percentile.
Oof.
50.3 effective field goal percentage on offense, 10th percentile.
Yikes.
They're not going to offensive rebound, 16th percentile.
Oh, my.
And guess what their defensive points per 100 possessions are?
I have no idea.
120.5 for 24th percentile.
Oh, no. Oh, that's not going to work. That won't do it all.
They're giving up 57.9 effective field goal percentage on defense. And if you want to look at their strengths in these lineups, they're not turning the ball over. They're getting to the free throw line, and they're not fouling and providing teams with free throws. Is that enough strength and you still, I feel like, have some holes in that lineup where I think you can target DiVincenzo, or if you want Luke McDaniels, who's a great defender, I think we've seen that Luke is still able to kind of get what he wants on that guy.
Yeah. That lineup doesn't sound very good. And again, it's why, like, I think instead of allowing the switching, we're going to see Minnesota try with different hedging and hard hedge, soft hedge, blitzing.
Keep the bigs out there. Try to disrupt LA, make them make second and third reads. Now, LA's got enough playmaking that I think this is going to be fine for the Lakers. But if Minnesota can keep their size on the court, they should keep their possession advantage. And I think that's part of the trade-off for them. I think that's what they should be looking for. Try to get more in the post, try to get more on the boards, try to defend the rim a bit better, force LA to beat you as a jump shooting team on the other end of the court, and on offense, try to get second chances. Like, I think that's a key part of their path to victory. And to support that, you have to at least try out these other options before you're willing to switch. I think if we see Minnesota heavy switch in game one, it is going to be a short series. Yeah, I mean, okay. Other things we talked about before was the double drag. I think it's going to be a great look for the Lakers. It was a great look for the Mavericks in their matchup last year against the Wolves. I don't know. It's hard for me to find a lot of great options. I mean, we're not a Wolves exceptionalism podcast, but trying to look at things objectively, this seems like it's going to be pretty tough no matter how you cut it for Minnesota on defense.
I think it's going to be a challenge based on what we talked about earlier with just like LA having good fallback options at any point in time, and LA's playbook crushing what Minnesota likes to do. And if Minnesota goes to drop, like, that's just a non-starter. And if they go to switching, like, it's open season to go hunt. They're going to have to send help. If they do decide to switch, it's going to have to be a very help heavy sort of approach. I looked at their past, let me see how many games here, their last 34 games of post-help defense, and they were doing a whole lot of what LA beats up with a lot of those baseline lurkers. They're not hard double teams, more of a soft double team. Rudy Gobert standing by and waiting a couple steps behind LeBron, posting up Randle. or whoever else. And when that happens, LA's been really good about cutting and then also setting pin and flare screens. So LA's good against that. High double teams are another thing they do often, and LA's been less structured against it. They'll just try to kick it back out, and Minnesota will attempt to recover. I think we're going to have to see a little bit smarter cutting, screening when it comes to those high doubles. So that could be something that they do that gives them a temporary advantage, assuming JJ and his crew adjust. Shouldn't last for too long, but it also hasn't been something the team has been good against this season. Let me pull up my data on help beaters that I track in my spreadsheet, having tracked every possession of the team this season. Let's see here. Against high doubles, the Lakers have countered only 30% of the time. And so that's not great. That's not what we like to see. It's been the second most used help type against them. For comparison, they are countering the baseline lurkers like 55% of the time. So still not fantastic, but much better. These numbers are all very low compared to where I'd like for them to be, compared to where they were last year, from what I understand, from kind of not tracking it the same way, but tracking each play nonetheless. So they might find some value in switching and then sending help and making LA beat them with help beaters. I think that's kind of the end game. Maybe not for this series, but later in the playoffs. At some point, a team is going to switch, send help, and force LA to outcoach them with these help beaters and out execute them and be on the same page. And LA has not consistently done it. So if you're looking for hope as Minnesota, to me, that's part of it. Against isolations, I looked through film today, and they use a mix of like high double teams, get the ball out of Luka's hands, that kind of stuff. They will kind of shrink into the gaps the way LA will do against Anthony Edwards, but they won't do it from each side. They'll more so shade you one way and then also have one help guy coming from that direction. So you're only allocating one extra player instead of two. So I expect some of that. LA will run their double drag. I talked about this the other day, but I'll share for the public pod as well. What we will see Minnesota do, and what I was able to confirm on film, is once they're beat up enough by double drag, what we're going to see them do is start icing that screen. They're going to let you use the first ball screen, but then have like a defender jump out and get in your way so you can't use the second one. And what LA will do, so this is what I've seen them do.
Then it becomes drop coverage.
It doesn't need to.
If you reject the screens, Luka's going left.
Can I here? Let me hang on.
Sorry.
No, really good question. No, because there's different ways to do it. You can do it with a drop. Let me pull up. Hang on, I gotta rearrange my screens here because my thing will only draw on the one screen. Let's see.
Yeah, but just based on court geometry, right? You got a couple guys at the top. You're gonna have a couple guys in the corner, and then the ball handler, right? They try to ice against that double drag. That, especially if they run it going to the right, which they have a lot for Luka, because he likes shooting. He'll shoot more when he's going to his left. He'll drive more going to his right. You ice that double drag, you're gonna have to have somebody in front of him.
Yeah, so what they'll do is they'll shoot this guy through the gap, and he'll try to build a wall here. This defender will kind of make sure Luka uses the screen and then try to get underneath 4. And then at this point, you've got Luka kind of further out than he'd like to be. You still have a second screener that you're able to use, but now the defense has an extra defender ready to rotate on the backside. So now if you do hedge, if you do run the screen and the defense hedges and you've got 2 on the ball, now what we can do is we can rotate and then bring this guy down, and now he could play the 2v1. And that's a better place to be as the defense. So it's not that it completely takes it away, but it takes away the inherent advantage of a double drag. If we compare this to like not using this kind of help.
I guess I thought that you would say they were icing on the first screen, but jumping and gapping in the middle, between them is fine. I still think Luka will probably take that 26, 27 footer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure the defense probably lives with that, but I'm not super mad at that either. I feel confident in Luka there.
Yeah. So, and just for folks watching, the value of the double drag is we pull all these players up away from the rim. We're going to pick and pop with our first guy, probably DFS or Rui. And then as Hayes is rolling down the middle of the court, and we've got two defenders here, we have corner shooter, lob threat. So 3 offensive options against 2 defensive options. And so Luka's making a 3v2 read. If LA actually has this guy like standing up here, now it's a 2v1 read where I'm just reading the weak side corner against the rim in this one defender. So it's a numbers game. Basketball is a draw, help, beat, help game, and you can manipulate the numbers. If you know the defense is going to give you the 4v3, let's make it a 2v1 or a 3v2. And so by shooting that gap and icing the second screen, not the first screen, good point of clarity, Minnesota can try to take away the advantage of this action. So that is a good tactical solution. It is a good way to approach this. Here's what we're going to see LA do to counter. I'm going to draw this up on the court. This is the kind of basketball I like. This is the fun part of the year. So what we're going to see LA do is they'll try to use that first screen. If the defense jumps out, what they'll then do is they'll short this action. And it'll often be LeBron. He'll go post up here at the high post, get him the ball at the elbow, and now try to hit this man getting downhill. So if you're Rui, or maybe they stick Hayes here, your job is set the screen on this guy, but then also make sure that Luka's defender, who's going to be switching onto you, cannot get underneath you. You have to get that inside position on your roll, and then you will be found. And now it's LeBron at the ball, with the ball at the elbow, reading one defender again on a 2v1 read, basically. So we've created the same advantage by shorting this action, and it is directly countering how we've seen Minnesota try to guard this. And against that, now you're in trouble if you're Minnesota. Now what they might try to do is they might try to have this guy take the roller and have Luka's guy peel off to the corner. So that's what they might do. That could be another step. We're adding steps here. This could be the chess match. And then to counter that, what we might see LA do is they might run an exit screen. So now LeBron has a guy here in the corner he can pass to, and now there's nobody available to help on that roll man. So we've just gone through like 5 different iterations of if you do this, then I do that. And this is what we're going to have to see. How quickly they get to this point will be very interesting for me to see. There may be times where, let's say they start shooting that gap and icing the second screen. If LA doesn't find the adjustment to that for a game, that could win Minnesota a game. If they find the adjustment like 2 minutes later, it's going to be a short series. And so how deep you can get in your bag, how much you can counter and play chess, it depends on 2 things. It depends on your coaching staff. It also depends on your players. If you don't have the right passing, let's say 5 isn't a good passer. If this isn't LeBron James, if this is, I don't know, pick a bad passer, maybe they're not making the reads effectively enough, and you could draw up the right play, but they're not finding the right options. This is a kind of a tree, a web of different routes you can go. There are different ways this could evolve. This is what I expect, at least the first couple steps, to happen based on what I've seen on film from each of these teams and their go-to when faced with these tactical challenges. And if we're able to fast forward to the end of this, we reach a point where Minnesota switches. And I think that's the end game of this series. If Minnesota's down 3-0 or 3-1, we're probably at a point where they've decided we can't do any of these other things. We've got to switch, or we've got to mix in some of what I just showed you and just hope we catch LA off guard because we've mixed it up enough. And as long as LA has these answers, they're in a good spot. Now, if they don't have these answers, if they're not able to make these counters, this can be a longer series, and Minnesota certainly has a chance to win it. So how well JJ and his staff play chess instead of the regular season checkers, which they've played and played well, will play a real factor in this series. Same thing on the Minnesota side. I mean, we've played teams. When we played Memphis with Taylor Jenkins, they had a good team. He was not playing chess, and that was a shorter series than it should have been. There have been other teams we played where it's been a longer series than it maybe should have been because the coaching was excellent. And we are going to learn a little bit about JJ, or we're going to learn a lot about JJ, I'll say, here in this series. And I hope we're in for a fun tactical battle. If we're not, it could either be a disaster for LA or it might be a very, very quick like 4-0 or 4-1 series win. But this is I know I'm going super deep in the weeds. I think this is why you all are here. Part of why y'all are here. I hope you're enjoying it. I don't know what this is going to sound like on audio, but this is the kind of stuff that I expect to see with the teams scheming and going back and forth. And none of this is genius. This is basketball. This is tactical X's and O's. It's only genius if the other team doesn't adjust. If LA starts shorting that ball screen and Minnesota never adjusts, we're going to see thought pieces about how JJ's a genius. If Minnesota adjusts and then they win the series, we're going to see thought pieces about how, Chris Finch is a genius. If we see JJ adjust, like it's just kind of wherever you end up is where people, crown a champion. Sometimes both coaches were excellent. Sometimes one coach really stunk. And so we're going to cover each step of this process as it unfolds throughout the series. And so stay tuned for not just this coverage, but as we dig into things round by round, game by game. It's going to be a little bit different from what you might see at some other outlets. But if it's your thing, this is the place to be.
For sure. One last thing I wanted to throw out there, Tim, is I'm going to take over the screen share to show you this rotation table that I pulled up. As far as to your point about Minnesota keeping Gobert out there, I wanted to call out just one last thing. Now, all of these Gobert lineups are positive, except for one, which is Gobert, Reed, McDaniels, Nah, Ant, which they're minus 9.5 in 196 possessions. But if you look at the other side, whenever they go Randle or Reed at the 5, whoever you want to call it, excluding this Josh Minute lineup, which I don't think he'll get run. They have an absurd plus 23.7 in 132 possessions. All of these other major ones are negative, except let's be charitable to Minnesota and say Randall, Reed, Nah, DiVincenzo, Ant has a positive aspect that they can throw out there. Instead of McDaniels, you have Nah, and then you have some other switchy guys out there. Well, you look, they're plus 13.6 with some great offensive numbers, 134.8 points per 100 possessions, but they're giving up 121.2 on the defensive end. So unless that lineup can maintain their hair on fire offensive efficiency, their defensive effectiveness is very much neutered, which is why you'd be playing that lineup in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So if anything, that could be something to keep an eye on. And not having McDaniels out there instead of Nah. Look, I think Nah's a great defender as well. You give up a little bit of length, but maybe a little bit more efficient shooting from him. You have 5 guys out there who realistically can shoot, even though the Lakers would be pretty fine with Randle shooting those threes. That might be a counter you see. And this is, again, why I think, to your point earlier, we won't see Gobert played off the court as much as maybe some other analysis has led you to believe. And this is partly why Minnesota has a vested interest in keeping him out there, at least through the regular season. He's been involved with the majority of their positive lineups.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If we see Minnesota respond with lineup changes instead of tactical changes, that's a really good sign for LA.
Yeah.
Because they have options. There are different options to go to. I think LA can certainly counter those. But if they are skipping all of that to just say we're going to take our most important defensive player off the court, then LA's in a really, really strong position. And I mean, you also really eat into the depth of this Minnesota team that's been playing like an 8.5-man rotation. So even if they do try to manipulate some specific lineups, they still have another, 40 minutes, 30 minutes. I don't know how many more minutes in the game they got to play, but you still have to fill a full rotation map. These guys can't, that one lineup can't play 48 minutes. So
yeah,
there will be groups that are stronger. There will be groups that are weaker. You got to build the best 48 minutes. Now, starting or closing, you can try to be really specific with it. But throughout the full game, there's going to be a consistent pressure from the Lakers and their offense against this Minnesota defense. And that would worry me if I'm a Minnesota fan. Another thing, kind of, again, sort of contrary to what you might be hearing, I think this is a really good Jackson Hayes series. I think this is going to be a high-minute Jackson Hayes series.
Really?
And when I took a look at the numbers for Jackson Hayes, Tom, looking at his minutes per game based on what the other teams ran from a coverage standpoint, there is a very clear correlation between opponents, especially post Luka, opponents hedging more and Jackson playing more because he's the lob threat. If you're going to put 2 on the ball, I want to get the lob threat. I want to pressure the rim and then have the corner shooters. And I try to turn the 4v3 to a 3v2 to a 2v1 and then have my playmakers making the reads. If it's a switching defense, Hayes does not make sense. And it's against those teams, we see him not playing nearly as much. Against drop, that's where I'd have the picking and popping. But against hedging, that's where I think he does play a big factor into things. And I expect him to play a good bit.
So this is why we don't public pod until we have a few days to get our hands into this stuff. So in our first initial reaction, I think we both agreed this is probably going to be a big DFS series, which I still think we both agree with. Mm-hmm. But I think we were under the assumption it might be in lieu of Jackson. Now, I definitely thought Jackson would be in the 13 to 18 minute range here in this series, which is about where we've seen him lately, at least. So when you describe it with the hedging concepts, though, that does make a lot of sense in the terms of he's either going to go 7 for 7 in a first quarter one night and get you like 14 points, or like they're going to get open corner threes galore.
Yeah, he should be part of the solution as a roll man.
Interesting.
This is a Minnesota team that, again, like I said, they like to hedge on the season. They have hedged, let's see here, 44% of the time. And I think it's going to be a little bit higher because I certainly don't think they're going to be in drop 36% of the time. So if they are, I mean, in the games this season since the Luka trade where opponents have hedged at least 50% of the time, Jackson's averaged 26 minutes per game. In the games where they've hedged, let's see here, less than 25% of the time, he's averaged 18 minutes per game. In the games where opponents are switching a bunch, he is, let's see here, averaging less than 18 minutes per game when they switch more than half the time. So like there's a pretty clear, I'm not saying he's going to play 38 minutes, but
yeah.
The difference between Jackson playing 15 and 25 could be what style of defense does the other team play. And I mean, LA's painted a pretty clear picture here to me when I'm looking at the information that this gears up to be an interesting Jackson Hayes series. So keep an eye on that. It may change as the coverages evolve, of course, but expect him to be part of LA's approach. I'd rather have him as a lob threat instead of Jared Vanderbilt or DFS or Rui catching 10, 15 feet from the rim, having to make decisions, make a dribble or two, and then try to finish at the rim.
If we're extending the chess metaphor, Tim, I believe the Lakers would be in white position, which has a slightly favored win percentage with this kind of what you're saying about Jackson is totally fair. And I think the Lakers counter tree goes a little bit deeper than the Wolves answer tree, if you know what I'm saying. So we laid out the non-Gobert lineups here a second ago. We talked about how the Lakers have so many playmakers, different post-up playmakers, different options that I think give them that advantage. So it makes sense to me. It makes me even stronger think the Lakers could make short work of this series, Tim. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to give a prediction. I'm happy to give mine. And I was kind of here before what you just said, but this just makes me feel more confident in it. I'm going to call a gentleman's sweep. Lakers win first 2 games. They lose game 3, and then they close out in LA in game 5.
I'm with you. Yeah, I think anytime you look at just the odds generally for the favored team, they're most likely going to win in 5 or 7. They're usually not closing things out on the road.
Or 4, but not always.
Or 4, yeah. I don't think 4.
I don't think it's 4.
I respect Minnesota too much for 4. I think within the range of like outcomes is certainly Minnesota winning. But there's so much between the matchups, between the scheme, between like the available tactics, between just the level of playmaking. Even if all of the scheme cancels itself out on each side for whatever reason, which I think that's too simple of analysis. Like LA's got the horses to be able to put up a bunch of points. And I just don't see Minnesota having enough good options to be able to match up with that. And that's way too simple of analysis. But digging into all these things, I continue to see it pointing in one direction. Of
Yeah.
course, we're coming to this from one perspective. It's okay if I'm wrong. If LA wins in 6, I'm not going to be upset about it. But I think it's more likely they close things out at home than on the road. And so for that reason, I think it's much closer to LA in 5 than LA in 7. And so I'll say 5.
I've been informed that a gentleman's sweep is 3-0 and then lose game 4. I always mix that up for some reason. I don't know why. That never stuck with me. I can absolutely see a gentleman's sweep in that context as well, where the Lakers stay on their grind, and then you kind of let up a little bit there in game 4 to, give yourself some time to come back strong in game 5. I'm picking Lakers in 5 either way. I would not be surprised by a gentleman's sweep either.
Yeah, I mean, I could see both happening. I mean, I could see LA in 7 happening. I could see Minnesota in 7 happening. There's a lot that's possible here. There's so much of a range of outcomes just based on what the tactics look like. If JJ is not the truth, and if JJ is not making good adjustments, there's enough in here between the disruptiveness of what hedging and blitzing can do to an offense and how that can jumpstart Minnesota's offense and allow them to keep their personnel on the court, that I can see this being problematic for LA. Minnesota's a very good team. They've been one of the best teams in the league this season. They've got a top 10 offense and defense. They've got a guy who is like in the hunt for defensive player of the year or first team all defense seemingly every year. That's going to be an option. They've got a great rim protector. They've got some great shooting. Like, this is a really good team. And so 5 feels disrespectful to me, but looking at all of those granular details and looking at when Minnesota is at its best, it's just scenarios that I don't expect LA to present to them. So I think, looking at LeBron, looking at Luke, and looking at Austin, you're not seeing those same like handedness issues and, oh, well, they're usually good, but if you take away this one thing, they're not good. There's just more depth to the options available. And this is a high IQ team. I expect LA to be able to take care of business. And I'm excited for the series. I think this is a really good matchup for LA. All right. Tom, I can't hear you if you're talking.
I agree. Thank you. I agree. I think this will be a good series, if not still a short one, in the sense that they will be competitive and fun games. I hope people don't take away we're disrespecting Minnesota, because I do think Ant provides a lot of challenges in the playoffs. His isolation rate goes up. He's the kind of guy that can make tough buckets, finish at all 3 levels, even though his mid-range hasn't been great. He can make those, especially if he is feeling himself that particular night. You could have an Ant game where he goes for 50 and is able to go off and win a game by himself. But the number of answers the Lakers have down the kind of counter tree and through that chess matchup, I feel pretty confident in, and it's just about them taking care of business and executing.
Yep. Yeah.
All right, folks.
Make Minnesota do things they're not used to doing. Make their non-playmakers make plays. Like, they make Mike Conley, make him have to defend on the boards. Make Jaden McDaniels have to navigate ball screens. Make Anthony Edwards with his F help defensive talent compared to rotation helpers rotate. Make Randle defend the rim and his F rim deterrence and D- rim protection among rotation helpers. Make Naz Reid and his F perimeter ISO defense among rotation helpers, defend on the perimeter. Like, there are guys that have holes, and Minnesota's done a great job this year avoiding putting their players in those positions. But if LA can force them to switch, I think it's game over.
Yeah, I can't wait for the JJ Redick hasn't slept in 76 hours reports. No, but in all seriousness, I think JJ has shown his basketball sicko credentials over this season, not just in his words, but in his changing the Lakers scheme. The defensive one was a big one for me, and I know he's probably not the mastermind of it. I'm sure Nate McMillan had some of his fingerprints in that as well, of course, but that ability to adjust and listen and collaborate, I feel good with the Lakers coaching staff is a lot more in comparison to where we've been in previous seasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If they can show some good things, man, JJ might be stamped. If they've got the tactics down, This is a team that can make a real run. Now they've got their limitations. I think if we face a team that's a really heavy switch team that has good on-ball defense across the board, that's how you beat this Lakers group. You take advantage of LA's lack of size on the other end of the court. Like that's how you beat them. Minnesota can do some of it, not all of it, and I mean they're still a really good team though. So this is a dangerous group. You got to hit your shots. We've seen what shot making on the good side can look like with some of these recent games. On the other end, it can lose you games that you should have won. So got to take care of business. It's up to the players and the coaches from here. I'm going to be, antsy for the next few days, but let's enjoy some basketball. Let's keep the conversation going. I saw that, I put up a Q&A request in the Discord, and at the lower bowl tier, got a bunch of great questions. For the ones that we didn't answer on here, I'm going to answer those between now and the start of game one. So keep an eye out. We have, I think, 4 different bonus pods out in the past 3 days for some extra content. So if you're looking to learn more or hear more when it comes to the tactics, check that out. If you want to check out the tracker for the Lakers run, every play of the season other than last game, I haven't done that one yet because it was garbage time the whole time. You can check that out. That can tell you a little bit about how LA is going to attack different coverages. We have that at the courtside tier in the Discord. We've got all sorts of great stuff going on there. Wonderful game chats and wonderful discussion. Between now and then, you don't have to have Minnesota fans lurking over your shoulder. So check that out. You can get to the link from Playback, from the pod description, from my bio on Twitter, from the pod account. My pinned tweet has all of the different levels and what's available. Tom's working on a couple cool videos that I am pumped for and excited to see. The content, this is our time of year, Tom. Yes, I want to dominate the content, Laker content industry here with everything that we're doing. And there's a lot of work that goes into it. So we appreciate all of the support and all the great conversation, and want to, keep it strong. I don't expect everyone to say yes to me or I agree with you, but challenge it. And that's how we make it sharper. And I want to dig into it. If there's a hole, I want to find the hole. I want to fix the hole. And we're going to just keep getting better and better round after round.
And join us on Playback on Saturday, 5:30 Pacific time. We will be doing game one. We will keep you posted for the rest of the games throughout the series. If we were going live, we will let you know probably the day before, but keep an eye on that. Turn on notifications on Playback, and we will see how things play out, Tim. Appreciate you, man. Talk to you guys later.